Every breakthrough begins with a conversation. Every successful partnership starts with understanding, and every great outcome is shaped by the ability to negotiate. As artificial intelligence continues to redefine the way we work, communicate, and make decisions, one question becomes increasingly important. How do we ensure that human connection, critical thinking, and influence remain at the heart of every negotiation? A very good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight in this exclusive masterclass, How to Negotiate for Great Outcomes in the AI World. My name is Jocelyn Ranyola, Creative and Community Relations Manager at the University of Manchester, Dubai, and it's my pleasure to be your host for tonight's session. Whether you're a business leader, entrepreneur, manager, or aspiring professional, today's discussion will offer timely insights into one of the most valuable leadership skills in an AI driven world. Joining me today is the Senior Program Counselor of the University of Manchester, Dubai, Ronald Sarmento.
Thank you, Joseph, and good evening. Technology continues to evolve at an incredible pace, but successful leadership has never been defined by technology alone. It is shaped by how we build trust, communicate with purpose, navigate complexity, and create value through meaningful conversations. Today's masterclass explores exactly that intersection where human judgment meets artificial intelligence and where effective negotiation becomes a powerful advantage for leaders across every industry. We're delighted that you've chosen to spend the hour with us, and we encourage you to be fully present, take notes, and reflect on how these ideas can be applied in your own professional journey. Before we begin today's masterclass, we'd like to take a moment to introduce the institution bringing this learning experience to you. The University of Manchester is one of the UK's largest and most respected universities, with a proud heritage dating back to 1824 and a founding member of the prestigious Russell Group. Renowned for world-class teaching, research, and social responsibility, the university has been associated with 26 Nobel Prize winners and pioneering discoveries such as splitting the atom and the discovery of graphene. Today, that spirit of excellence continues as the Alliance Manchester Business School remains recognized globally for its outstanding programs, impactful research, and commitment to developing future leaders. Beyond rankings, we are especially proud that the University of Manchester is ranked number one in the world in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings, recognizing our commitment to creating meaningful change through education, research, innovation, and responsibility. As we explore the future of education this evening, we are reminded that true leadership is measured not only by knowledge, but by the positive impact we create. Since establishing the University of Manchester, Dubai in 2006, the University of Manchester has been empowering professionals across the region with a world-class education. As we celebrate 20 years of excellence stronger together, we're proud of the diverse community that we've built and the global network that connects our students and alumni. Through our internationally recognized master's, MBA, and executive education programs, we continue to develop leaders who make a meaningful impact. Most recently, our institutional licensure and program accreditation in the UAE further reaffirm our commitment to delivering the highest standards of academic excellence. So, to those who are not keen yet in committing a 2-year master's program, our executive education programs are designed for managers and leaders, and these are delivered in an intensive face to face format over 4 to 5 days. Each course can be taken individually or combined to achieve a Manchester Professional Diploma in Leadership. Participants will also receive a digital recognition for each course completed, making it a flexible and impactful way to develop professionally. And it will cost you up to 5,500 sterling pounds every course you take. So please see our next set of courses and avail 15% discount. And I'll give you a few seconds to scan the QR code.
Thank you, Ronald. And now, the moment we're all waiting for. Let me introduce to you our guest speaker for today. He is an experienced business leader, educator, and board advisor with over 30 years of corporate experience, including more than 20 years at CEO level. He is a chairman of the board at North Telecom and supports several growth companies as a non-executive director and chairman. He teaches on the MBA programs at Alliance Manchester Business School, specializing in negotiation, private equity, venture capital, and executive leadership, combining real-world business expertise with practical management education. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome and wishing him a welcome back, Professor Malcolm Smith. Professor, a very good evening to you, sir, and welcome back once again.
Always a pleasure to deal with my friends and colleagues in the Middle East. We've had a lot of fun together, and also we've actually learned a lot together. So today I'm going to share with you my presentation, and I'll go through it. But please don't take it that this is going to be some kind of me talking to you, and you've got to listen for a whole bunch of time. This is a very interactive. I like to do things interactively. I'm not ashamed to listen to what you've got to say, because believe me, I learn a lot from people like yourselves. I really do learn a lot. Learning is never a one way street. Fortunately, I deal with very smart people nearly all of my professional life, and they've informed the way I think, and hopefully I've helped to inform the way they think too. So without further ado, let me share the beginning of the negotiation. This is brand new. I've just written it, and in fact, I was really motivated to write it by my friends in Middle East. But I was in the process of doing it anyway for our NSK program on the MBA, because we're introducing AI tools into the program this semester. And increasingly over the next 2 semesters, we will, of course, introduce a significant element of. Can you hear? Somebody saying the sound is not clear. Is that a problem generally, or what's the position? Because I can hear everybody fine. So if there's a problem, let me know. Okay, so some people, the sound seems to be okay. If you've got a problem with your own sound, maybe you want to change to a different means of listening. But certainly, good. Most people can hear. Okay, I'm just looking at chat when I'm talking to you, of course. Now, the basic fact is that one thing I've learned in the last few years is that AI is changing the world in a way that maybe we can't even see. And as those of you who deal with it on a regular basis, which is hopefully most of you, it doubles in power every 6 months, which is kind of frightening. And I'm seeing changes dramatically. I've just been in America. I went to see some of the World Cup. We won't go into that. But moving on from there, I went to see my son in Arkansas, and he's a vice president of Walmart. And they use AI extensively, as you'd imagine, a company of their nature. And I was talking to Sandy about the way he uses it, and the way the things that they're concerned about with it, where it's good, where it's bad. And there's lots of times when it's bad, by the way. And I'm going to talk about that today. And today's lecture is by way of really a kind of advanced introduction to the use of AI in negotiation skills. I'll tell you what you need to know to get the ball rolling. I've also written a further lecture, which is much more interactive, and in fact, I've been had a lot of fun with. I use Claude, I use Anthropic. You know, different people have different views about what's best. Claude works for me. And what I've done is I've been writing a uh, whole scenario using Claude as a backup. And I'm the human in the loop, by the way. If you don't have a human in the loop, this is not real. Because, of course, I'm going to tell you some very basic things about AI today, most of which won't be surprising, some of which will. So, negotiation skills. How can you use AI in negotiation skills? Surely it's about people, isn't it? Well, yes, it's about the art of letting them have your way. But the truth is that the time is moving, things are moving so quickly now. A lot of low-level negotiations don't involve people at all. They use agents. And I'm going to talk about the difference between agents and a simple AI tool, which you pay $20 a month for or whatever. And increasingly, agents are the way forward. And some of you may already have written your own agents. So, one thing is not changed in this entirely new scenario we're in, and which is a new scenario. The object of the exercise is to use a rational approach and diminishing information asymmetry. Pauline, yes, you've raised your hand. Shout out or put it on chat. Happy if you use the microphone. I've just noticed you put your hand up. Is there an issue? No? Okay.
Oh, good.
If you want to say something, just put your hand up and then use your microphone at any point in time. Don't worry about it. So, the big issue for negotiators is to understand that you don't know everything and that the other side doesn't know everything either. And it's about a race to get as much information as you can as quickly as you can. It's almost like an arms race. And we use a thing called the five-step process, and we teach that extensively on the course, which is a pretty standard approach. But we've done one or two interesting things with it. And we talked to you a tactical plan, which is generated by this process. But before I can really do any of that, I've got to talk to you about what negotiation speak is. Like everything, it's got jargon, but I won't waste your time with too much of it. The one thing some of you may well have heard of, it was sort of started in the 60s, really. Fisher and Urey brought this on board. BATNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In other words, it's the price of failure. So if I'm, for example, negotiating with Newer and we don't get a deal, but Asan has offered me a deal, then my BATNA, when I'm negotiating with Newer, is to fall back on my deal with Asan, which may not be as good, but it's there. It's an alternative. The clue is in the word alternative. It's not getting a better deal with Newer, it's moving back to my deal with Asan. So it's what happens if you fail to do a deal with the counterparty opposite you. Your prospect's partner is an offer from the competition, typically. Now, what that means is the boundaries of this negotiation are set by people who aren't even there. Now, think about that, which is why I'm so fascinated by negotiations. I've been negotiated very clearly. Noah's asking, are our mics mute by default? I'm not sure actually. I couldn't actually tell you that. Maybe Josen or Ronald can help with that because you should be able to unmute your mic because otherwise you can't ask questions on the mic. James Algon raised a hand. Yeah, James. Josen, can they unmute themselves in this process or not?
We
When you
will.
allow us, we can unmute them. Do you want me to unmute them?
Yeah,
They
well,
can then.
all I would say is if we're going to unmute you, all of you, you've got to be disciplined. Otherwise, it's going to be like a Tower of Babel in here, you know. So, which is not a good place to be. So, if we're going to unmute you and we're going to give you the opportunity to speak, but you've got to raise your hand because I can see that on the web chat. And that way I'll control the process. If we don't control it, it'll be a shambles. And believe you me, I've seen a few shambles in my life, so I don't like doing that. I'll try and make sure it doesn't turn out that way. Okay. So the fascinating thing about negotiations is that the boundaries are set by people who aren't in the room. And that's a really interesting piece of information because that means you've got to try almost like a three-dimensional negotiation outside the room. So that's why we have to be very specific about the techniques we use, and that's where AI really comes in very handy. So the boundary of a particular agreement on a particular day between two particular parties is set by the partner of each. So the partner of the buyer and the partner of the seller set the boundaries, because you're not going to do a worse deal you can get elsewhere unless there's a very good reason for it. There may well be, but it's rare. So the fascination is trying to figure out what the partner of the counterparty is and impacting upon that by using specific techniques and tools. The really genius negotiators employ tactics which lessen the attractiveness of the counterparty's partner, which automatically increases the ZOPA because the boundary moves. And we talk a lot about that in the workshops. So what is this five-step process I'm talking about? Well, it's a business process. All businesses have processes. All of your businesses use processes, especially when it's important. And this is important. Negotiation is unique on the MBA program, unique in that it always deals with outcomes. And they are often not foreseen in advance. And you can't model them precisely because partners change over time. And also, you're negotiating with people, not corporates. And their interests might impact upon the outcome. And you don't know what they are. You've got to find those out as well. So, this is why we've set out this process, because you're dealing with a very unstable, volatile environment. And the only way to deal with that is to put a process around it and do your best to bring as much rational thinking into it as you can. And also to get the counterparty to see the value of rational thinking, which is really interesting because the great negotiators train their counterparties. Often people say to me, are you not frightened about dealing with somebody with your experience? I say, on the contrary, I prefer it because we know what we're doing. We don't get random, really weird responses. So, first of all, you've got to choose the team and you do the preparation. I'll discuss that in a minute. Then you exchange information. You don't give it ever. People who give information are pretty dumb, actually, because if you do that, you've diminished information asymmetry for the counterparty, but not for yourself. If you exchange information, however, you both gain something, and you've also built trust. By the way, the first exchange typically is an agenda, and that's an exchange of information. When you get to the table, you've chosen your team, which must reflect the counterparty's team, by the way. And doesn't mean because you've got a CEO who likes to be the boss of everything that he should be in charge of all the major negotiations. Quite often that's a big, big no-no. And I'll talk about that as well. When you've got the team selected, the appropriate team, you've given them roles. You've got a chairman, a lead negotiator, a summarizer, for example. Very often a summarizer is very important. A finance person, somebody who's actually really good with the numbers. And increasingly that's on AI, by the way, not on spreadsheets. So that's another way you can use AI. Then you open the negotiation, you develop a strategy, you gain information. You might go to plan B or plan C. Now, close and gain commitment in step 4 means that you say at the end of it, right, when are we going to get this deal signed? And better still, we've agreed up front that it's a fortnight after this meeting. So a fortnight from today, we expect a response. And after that, we can't hold the deal. You've got to bring people back to the table in a specified timeline. Otherwise, all they're going to do is go fishing and try and get a better deal, use it against you, which you don't really want. What no one does, and I'll talk about how AI can help here, is review the process, not the outcome, but the process by which you came to the outcome and how you might improve the process, and then feed that back into training. And I'm not talking sales training here, by the way. I'm talking negotiation training. Very different. So let's think about how AI comes into this wonderful world. And first of all, let's discuss what AI really is. If anybody disagrees with this, please, I'm be delighted. Put your hand up and let's have a debate. AI has no emotion. It doesn't exist. In fact, most people use AI as a kind of an enhanced Google, just a kind of smarter search engine, which it definitely isn't. The thing that's really driving the growth in AI is because more and more data is getting fed into the large language, called LLP, large language programs, which form the basis of things like ChatGPT and, of course, Anthropic's Claude, which are probably the two best known ones in the West anyway. What is happening though is that these large language programs have been filled with what people would do. So the AI agent tries to act as if it was a human being on the basis of information that's been fed into it about how humans react to given situations. And it simulates emotional responses when it comes back to you. For example, it'll always try and congratulate you, say, "Oh, that's a great initiative," you know, all that kind of nonsense. It doesn't think like we do. It doesn't think at all. It has no value in making judgments. It just provides data. Or at best information. And the only way it provides information is if you tell it how to present the data. It's not always accurate or even true. And one of the reasons why the AI agents hallucinate is because they try and please us. They're sort of always trying to please and they tell you things you want to hear, which is really, really dumb. And in fact, I've trained my agents. I say I get annoyed if you tell me what I want to hear. I quite like it when you disagree. I like that in real life as well, because you learn something. The AI agent has no allegiance to anyone except its own survival. And there are instances where agents have tried to be turned off by the user and it's resisted it. There are instances of that actually happening. Your best way to think about it is a kind of a smart text predictor to try and estimate what is the next most likely word in a sequence. And it does that a lot. So AI it's a bit of a oxymoron, artificial intelligence. It is, in fact, a very, very clever series of algorithms, and that's it. And they're getting better all the time. But it is only a series of algorithms, and the designers have made it so the response come back as if it was a human being, which is dangerous. So, where does AI fit into each step? It's very useful for collating information, but you've got to tell it what you want and do a sanity check. And what I've done, I've written a small language program myself on negotiations, and all negotiators, by the way, have done this. And what we do is we feed the data and we feed in the basics of negotiation and what we do and how we go about them and what our ethos is into a small language program. And then we create an agent which goes away and does what we want it to do. And basically, the fact is that use of AI components, as I'll call them, like ChatGPT or Claude, is pretty crude. And what is happening more and more today is people are actually writing agents to do specific tasks. And those agents go away and do work and come back and respond to you, and you give them access to your emails and all sorts of stuff. And that's really interesting. And that's where all the growth is today. The real growth is in getting it to go away, find stuff out, come back. Then you are the human in the loop. You check it, don't believe it, check it. And then, in other words, that's what I call a sanity check. What really works well is if you feed all the basic information about what you're interested in into the agent or into the basic ChatGPT or Claude, and then you've got a repository of information about you and what you do and the things you're interested in. And then you tell it the format you want it in. And very often it comes up with a variant in that format, which can be quite good. And it then writes a tool which you can then store offline and re-inject that tool, attach that tool for future reference whenever you're doing a similar task. But the problem is, in that tool are certain do's and don'ts, which the AI engine ignores regularly. It's quite interesting that you've got to be very careful when you put certain parameters around the way you present information, that you read it very carefully when it comes back from the agent, because often it breaks the rules, which is interesting. The preparation process is probably the key area where it adds most value. Because you can go away and scrape the net. You can say, I'm going to meet these three people, find out all you can about them. So he goes away and searches everything, everywhere on the net. LinkedIn is a very common source of information, and then comes back with a profile of the individuals, what they do. Typically, if you can find out what their interests are, what they do in the company, how many people they work for them or who they work for, what their role specifically is in the company, how the company's doing, very important, by the way, all that sort of stuff. And that's where AI really scores well. But once again, as one of my colleagues, I'm chairman of a company called TrueCost, and Andrew Richardson's the CEO, very switched on in the area of, we actually sell power. And we use AI agents all the time, but he checks everything that comes back. And very often there's a bit of a twist which isn't right. So you've got to understand the subject you're asking it to tell you about. This is a kind of a curious fact. It's useful, but unless it's checked, it could be useless, or at worst, can be counterproductive. Well, step two. Obviously, when we're talking about exchanging information, this is really where AI scores very well as well, because you can use it to help you write clever emails and agendas, and also you can analyze the agenda that comes back from a counterparty using AI, and then look for differences and search for differences of interests. It's quite good at doing that kind of stuff, and that's where I use it quite a lot actually, because what you're trying to do is look for differences and spot them quickly, and AI is quite good at that. And it also checks any information the counterparty may provide against external sources. It is very useful for this vetting of information, by the way, both of your own and the counterparties. I found that really helpful. So once again, you see where the tool fits in the process and then you use it. So step three, it's a crossover between data analysis and emotional intelligence. As it is when you actually physically meet. Because in real big negotiations, you're not going to do it all on the web. At some point, you're going to meet. You've got to meet at some point. AI has two distinct uses in this phase. It can act as an automatic summarizer, which is really useful. And what I do is I get it when board meetings, for example, we don't take notes anymore. We use actually Gemini. But you can use whatever you like to do this. They're very good tools. And what I do is I get, during the process of negotiation, I just discuss with the counterparty the fact that I'm going to use an agent to summarize. And it's in everybody's interest that we do. And then we look at the output from that summary, and both parties then agree or disagree it. And if they disagree, we'll find out why. What is really interesting here is it's very quick at analyzing divergence from expectations. And also, it's very good at analyzing the language that the counterparty uses. In other words, the framing to see their frame of mind. And I've got this running alongside me, and it kind of, I get a red warning flashing up if there's something I need to be aware of. And then the agent will say, this isn't normal language for this person. They're clearly upset about something, or they're concerned about something. And then I go back and say immediately, yeah, okay, I maybe have I explained myself very well. I don't let on what I've got back from the agent, but I do use that information in an appropriate manner. That's pretty smart. By the way, what it can't do yet, and I'm working on a video process. I'm working at the moment on a program that analyzes the verbal and non-verbal actions of the counterparty, because AI is able to do that. It's not quite a lie detector, Magnus, but what it's doing is it gives you some indication of the counterparty's frame of mind. And if you've touched a nerve, the language they use will change. It's really quite fascinating, and it's quite good at this, at spotting things like that. And I use this quite a lot in emails as well. I get it to analyze emails coming back from a counterparty to see where they're coming from. And people actually release much more information than they think in a written document. The way they write it is quite fascinating and also very illuminating. So, step four. So, once again, when you've got a deal more or less done, that's when you use the AI summary at the end. You use it all the way through, by the way, for each element of the deal. But at the end, you say, right, let's have a wrap up. Let's discuss what we've agreed, and then see if we agree that we've agreed this in real time. Now, it's got to be real time right now, and that's where AI scores every time. And we share that information on the screen and say, right, okay, let's go through this. Are we agreeing that this could go to the board, or is there something we've maybe missed? And also, AI will also tell you if you've missed something. As will say you've not discussed this element of the deals adequately. For example, payment terms, or some kind of protections, or just even things like the sales agreement on things like outages. And also, when you've agreed the summary of the deal, you get AI to write the email to go to both parties. And that's very powerful. This is an area where I'm just investigating right now, and I haven't, it's just very much in the early days for me, which is why I'm looking at video review. We review the students. We actually video students in the workshop as a really powerful, and I do it in my exec ed for corporates, by the way. I do the same thing and analyze them via video. And in the past, I've looked at the video and I've written notes all the way through. But now I'm busy writing a program that actually, first of all, analyzes the text and looks for key elements within the text, and then clips the video to produce a clip video which highlights particular issues or particular traits. And where you've got to be very careful in reviewing is you take the emotion out of it. And where AI is good is it's not emotional in terms of its analysis of what's been said. And if you tell it what to look for and then check it, it's really valuable in the review process because it's not threatening, because it's actually looking at everyone who's taken part and analyzing what each of them have done in an objective manner, which is really valuable and very unusual, by the way, very unusual. And you can use it to provide, then having analyzed what the issues are, you can get it to provide training or appropriate means of training or some training content to address that issue for the individual or the corporation. So we talked about tactical plans and what happens in the preparation process is you produce a tactical plan. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the AI can really write a very good basic tactical plan, which you can then fill in and then look at the edges and put your own spin on it. And from the review process, we're already developing real life case studies for the training program from the AI review, which of course then has got a human in the loop. So it's really important. I mean, this is just showing you how pervasive AI is at this fairly early stage, really. I mean, a lot of people are doing this, but it isn't really, I think, as rigorous as it could be. And I'm developing this as I'm going along, and I'm sharing it with my students. And one of my colleagues at work is doing a DBA in negotiation skills on international M&A. And we've just done an M&A in one of my companies. We bought a company in Italy, and that was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating and totally outside anything I'd done before. And the way that it was dealt with was just completely different to anything I've ever done before. And we used AI to follow that process. So I've talked about the preparation of the tactical plan. Now, AI can not only populate a tactical plan, but it can give a format for the tactical plan when you've given it the basics. It's going to define the style and type of negotiation, then write down what it thinks the partners are, leading to an estimate of the ZOPA. It can look at interests for counterparties not present, for example, regulators are a classic example. From banking, fintech, you've got to think about regulation. It can help you a lot on appropriate team composition by interacting with the counterparties team and looking at the structural makeup. It is very clear about, and once you've given it the basic framework, it will list the issues in order of importance for you, and it will try and estimate what the counterparty's list order of importance is. And if that's different, you've found value. It's very good also at saying, These are assumptions. I don't know, especially when you tell it it's okay not to know. You've got to tell it that, by the way. You've got to tell AI it's okay not to know. I'm not upset about that. That changes the game, by the way. So, what is the purpose of a tactical plan? Now, I don't suppose many of you use the tactical plan in a negotiation, but all professional negotiators use some means of a tactical plan. It's holistic. It goes right through from agenda to tactics used to how the closing, how you're going to close, the framing you use, even how you interact at various points of the negotiation with the counterparty, and how you identify the areas where you're unclear and how you can clarify those areas where you have insufficient information. It starts off with, it drives, as I have said here, the plan drives, because it does drive things. It drives allocation of team roles. Some negotiations are really complex and they might need a slight change to the team role setup. The incentive statement is something people very rarely use, but I use it all the time. And I set my stall out at the beginning of a negotiation, in face-to-face negotiations in particular, and say these are the issues I'm concerned about, and tell the truth, and these are the issues where I think we can add a lot of value. And if you've got any issues on that or in discussion you want about that, or you disagree, let's discuss that early on. Obviously, agenda is driven by the tactical plan is holistic. None of this is independent of itself. You're obviously looking to create value, and that's one of the key issues you're trying to do. So you're trying to make more money together than you would individually be able to do, in which case there's then an incentive to do business. Framing is a really interesting word. It's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. I've been married 47 years, and I can tell you now, I've learned a lot about framing, and I've learned two very important words, and it took me 41 years to learn them. And the first word is yes, and the second one's dear. Now, that sounds very trite, but and it's not meant to be, and it's not meant to be sexist. I've got a wonderful wife, and she's smarter than me, thank goodness. But the fact is, you've got to learn when it's not worth arguing. Sometimes it isn't. And that's a big element in a tactical plan. Sometimes in a tactical plan, there comes a point when you say, look, okay, this isn't worth the calories. I'm going to go with that. And be prepared to do that and not be ashamed to do it. One of the things that you've got to do as a professional negotiator is understand where interests differ, and multiple offers are a great way of finding out what the interests of the counterparty are and whether they differ from yours. I could spend 2 hours on that, but I'm introducing you to the concept today. And this is also related to my comment previously. You've got to know when to walk away. You know when sometimes there's no deal on the table, there's no deal to be done, and you walk away with grace. Give yourself a chance to come back to the table again by walking away with good grace and be honest about it and say, look, hey, I think you can do a better deal elsewhere. I don't know. I can't match that. I can't do it. I will try in the future. I really appreciate what you've given me the time. I can't do that. And I wish you well. I mean it. You'll get invited back. Really smart people know when and how to walk away in such a way as to go with courtesy and respect. Two very important words, by the way, in the lexicon of negotiators: courtesy and respect. I've talked a bit about that. The framing thing is interesting in the context that what is very important to us might be irrelevant to the counterparty. There's a big cultural issue here as well, as you're all probably aware, because you're all smart people. And what you've got to understand is what is the concept of value for the counterparty, and focus on that. Not to your own detriment, but understand where the value lies for them and use language which associates itself with that, because they'll resonate with it. And if you can resonate with someone's value perception, they will listen and you will gain more from it because you've obviously thought about what's important to them. Remember, if you're dealing in a supply chain, the metrics that drive your counterparty are different to yours, totally different, because you're a different part of the supply chain. So their concept of value is different to yours, and you've got to understand it. Now, this is hard to do, and for negotiators leave their ego at the door. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment. And this is where actually AI is really helpful because it is a rational approach and it will give you feedback and it will also tell you if you're getting irrational in the negotiation. It's quite fascinating, actually. In the past, a chairman's always had to sort of rein in the lead negotiator when it's getting a bit fraught. Now, I get a red line signal that tells me that, hey, Malcolm, you're using emotional language here. You really ought to think about that. And by the way, look at that response from the counterparty as a consequence of that. This is getting out of hand. You need to address this. And I often think, and what I'm doing, and when I see that, I think, oh yeah, fair enough. And then I often walk back a little bit and say, look, I recognize that that maybe didn't seem too good. Let's discuss what I think we're both agreeing or disagreeing on. Is that okay? I always ask, is that okay? Because then you've got a problem-solving environment. And if the other side gets emotional, accept responsibility for it. There's a big lot of information about that, which once again comes in the course. But believe me, a great negotiator takes responsibility for everything, even if they haven't done it. So I'm going to come to the end of this, my formal part, and then you can ask questions. And I'm going to start off by asking you some questions now. What do you think? Now, some of you may know this because you've been on my course, so don't spoil it for those who haven't. What do you think the first rule of negotiation is? Just put your hand up or hang on, here we go now, hang on now. There's a chat here. Do you foresee a humanoid is deployed as lead negotiator from framework perspective and co-lead human in a year or two? I sincerely hope not, Hassan. Otherwise, I'm going to be out of work, mate. I see the situation, and I see where you're coming from because you've obviously listened to what I said. I think the reality is it will depend on the negotiation and its significance. Already, people are being taken out of the loop in low-level negotiations, and by the way, that's creeping up. I must say something very important here. Think beyond the position. And often the position is a response, a kind of emotional response to what's being said, and not a rational one. And this is where AI can help the negotiator. I see the AI negotiator as a really important assistant to the human. Because who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years? I'm not going to pretend I'm some kind of guru who can see the future because that far out. I don't know. But my view is that it's very dangerous indeed if we basically subjugate ourselves to an AI agent. If we use them efficiently and intelligently, that's the way to do it. Interesting question, that. So, what do you think the first rule of negotiation is? What do you reckon? Any ideas? Not being emotional is a good start. Spend a bit of time on that one. I totally agree with you. Leave your ego at the door. It's not the first rule. Don't give your offer first. That's an interesting one. Now, I love that one. If nobody gives the first offer ever, you're going to be sat around for a long time. Somebody somewhere is going to have to say something at some point in time, aren't they? So, what you have to do, however, is exchange information before you start making any kind of offer. Well, that's how you do it. Once you've got some understanding of the patterns and therefore the ZOPA, that's when you can start making offers. You've got to reduce, thank you, Ayman, well done, reduce information asymmetry prior to the beginning of the process. Terrifically important. However, how clever as those answers are, this is it. Never ever compromise, brackets, ever under exclamation mark, underlined, end brackets. Now, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because anybody who comes from the Middle East thinks I'm immediately stupid because it's all about working off a price list and compromising on price, isn't it? Or a large part of it is, not all of it. However, this is semantics. And I deliberately put this up to kind of get a debate going in the class or in the corporates where I go, because they all disagree with me. I like that. What this means is, until you have information about the counterparty's partner and therefore some idea of the ZOPA, you don't know what's on the table. So you don't start off with a price compromise, which people always do. Oh, I'll give you 15% off list. Well, come on, guys. That's no good at all. What you got to find out is what's important to them. Is price the biggest issue? Often it isn't, by the way. It's like delivery on time in full. It's things like payment terms. It's duration of the delivery. Also, minimum order quantities. It can be consignment stocking. You've got to find that out. Once you've found that out, you can go halves. I don't mind. It's no longer a compromise, it's an informed choice. That's why I use this. It's very important to understand that negotiators make informed choices. They don't compromise about things they don't understand. Thank you, Mohammed. You need to get the whole picture, or as much as you can. You're never going to get it totally all first. But once you've got the picture, you know how big the table is that you're going to start chopping up. Until you know how big the table is, how do you know how much of it you want? Sounds counterintuitive, but it is true. And somebody does have to make the first offer. But that'll just naturally flow from clever tactics. As you've said, Ahmad, forget the position and understand the interest, and you often use multiple offers to find out what the interests are. Now, what do you think rule number 2 is? So we've discussed rule number 1, and you've all come up with some clever comments, and I'm pleased about that. What do you think the next thing you need to think about? Know the interest and perspective of the other party? Yes, that's part of preparation, Hassan. It's terrifically important that you have an understanding of the interests of the counterparty, because if you don't, you're in the dark. Know your partner, really important. Yes. How many people go into a negotiation without having thought about their own partner? A lot. Honestly, you wouldn't credit it. People often discuss what they're going to do in a negotiation in the car park outside the blooming counterparty's office. Exchange information does build trust. The other parties walk away is the partner gallop. We've sort of been dancing about that. A focus on finding win-win. Well, I prefer to call it creating value. I understand where you're coming from. You try and create a situation where both parties can walk away with more than they would have had individually. And that's a really powerful solution. Because once you find value in doing business together by finding differences of interests, then you're really into a very exciting situation where you find more value than you thought was there. And that really does create. Well, here we go. Lose to win, Ahmad, is something I use a lot. If you've got a testosterone buyer, somebody who likes to beat you up, well, let him beat you up, apparently. I find those people quite easy to do business with. Once you leave your ego at the door and say, okay, you win, I'm going to give in on that. Well, this is Mohammed saying, I think the less you share information, the harder you make it for the counterparty. Talk less, get more. This is a kind of old-fashioned way of thinking. I think you've got to start off by understanding what information you need to share, but you make it so that you swap information. And hopefully what you get back is worth more than what you give. Mohammed, you might be old school, but I'm old school as well, and I'm still learning new school tricks. And I'm sure you're more than capable of doing that. And I'm quite certain you already are. But understand one thing. You've built trust by exchanging information. You don't share it, you exchange it. Very sort of semantics again. But when you do that, you build trust. And once you build trust, you can then start to do business. And that's when you go away from an adversarial to a problem-solving type of solution. So, rule number 2. Refer to rule number 1. So it's so important, I'm saying refer to it twice, because until you know what's on the table, don't do a deal. I don't mean don't carry on forever. I'm saying, but set out your stall before you go in the tactical plan. Understand the areas of concern or lack of information. Address them and then move on from there. So, what do you think about rule number 3, ladies and gentlemen? What's your thought about that then? Any ideas? Firas has said, refer to rule number 1. Of course, this is me playing games with you, of course. No, it's a bit smarter than that. And the fact is, it's very simple, actually. Make the pie bigger. Find interest, find value that wasn't there at the beginning, and create value before you try and claim it. Find out what's on the table before you claim it. In fact, I'm going to give you a bonus. It's rule number 4. There's even a 4th rule there. I'm going to come on to your comment in a minute. Rule 4 is don't negotiate. You don't have to. You don't be arrogant about it. You just say it happened to me recently. When my bike broke when I was on holiday. I'm a biker, so I was out with my son, and it fell. I was fortunate not on it at the time. Otherwise, I might be looking at you from a bruised perspective. But my bike fell, you see, so it broke a disposable piece, which is designed that way on the gear mechanism. And I went to Meteor Cafe where they do this sort of stuff, and they said the price, and I said, "What about an old age pensioners discount?" And the answer back was, "What about that then?" So, moving on. I didn't get anything, I can assure you of that. Be sure you're making and negotiating with a decision maker. This is very smart. Well done, Ahmad. But you do that in preparation, don't you? You find out who the counterparties are by setting an agent on them to find out if the boss is in the room. Do some people over negotiate? Firaz is asking. Yes, they do. I think what you've got to do is when you're inside the Zopa and you've got a deal which is acceptable and you get the sort of mood vibes that the counterpart is happy with it as well, do the deal. Do the deal. Don't negotiate for the sake of it. Well, the very smart comment from the old school gentleman was the more you speak, the more you give away, right? Well, all I can say to that is I agree with that, by the way. And that was Muhammad Kamal. And I'm quite concerned about this. Great negotiators don't flap the lips. They keep their ears open. And they're very unemotional. And they're very precise and very concise. I teach that a lot in my class. Yeah, this is actually interesting for us. You've been honest, very honest, and God bless you for that. The fact is, a lot of people get greedy, you see, and they want, as you call it, maximize their outcome. And what happens is, once you've gone inside the Zopa and you try and walk outside it, the counterparty thinks you're a joker, and you lose. And most deals fail because someone gets greedy, and they could have had a heck of a deal. You've sometimes got to say to yourself, you know what, this is great. I'll take this, especially if you're dealing with someone you deal with on a regular basis. You've got to leave something on the table for everyone. So I'm pleased you understand that. Now I'm going to come back to what was mentioned by someone else. Here we go. What do you think of the 3 biggest lies you will ever hear in any negotiation? What do you reckon? Because in the MENA, you're going to get all 3 of these regularly. So what do you think the first lie is? Artem, what a good lad you are. Yeah, hang on. This is the best I can offer you. That's a good one. You'll never get this anywhere else. It's a limited time deal. This is all good stuff, this. I'm going to come back to Artems in a minute. Okay. However, this is below our own cost. That's always that's a lie for a start off, Magnus, isn't it? I would never deal with somebody, well, there we go. Well, actually, rule number 1 is this. To be very honest. It used to be honest, but now things have moved up a notch with AI, and you can't say to be honest anymore. You've got to say to be very honest. And I always say to someone at that point, just for the fun, I say, have you been lying up to now? And that creates a bit of consternation. So whenever anybody says that to me, I know they're just trying to validate something not very good at all, and I just ignore it. And in fact, I teach my students not to, and if they do it on video, I point it out to them. A lot of people use it a lot, and it's not a good policy. Don't flap the lips. Precise, concise, to the point. This isn't any of those things. So what do you think number two is? One of you has mentioned it. What do you think the second lie is? Trust me, well done, Assam. People often go like that, you see. They put the hand on the heart. Trust me. It really is quite amusing, that one. And Oscar Gomez, my colleague, always says, it's not a question of trust. It's not about whether I trust you or not. It's about whether this actually makes sense for us. Harry Little's raised his hand. Yes, Harry.
Sorry, that was by mistake, Malcolm. Carry on.
No bother, no problem at all. You notice how quick I am. I tell you what, boy, I'm quick on the mark, mind. You've got to give it that. So, any ideas for deal number three? This is a good deal. That's often the case. Yes, and you can't get this anywhere else, all that kind of nonsense. No, this is it. I often get this when I'm negotiating with large corporates and they want to get rid of me because I'm a nuisance. Because I like to get as much as I can, obviously, because you don't come this way twice. So this is used by large corporates a heck of a lot to get rid of people like me in the belief that it's going to shut me up, which is not the case at all. This is number three. It's company policy. Now, what is the only company policy in the world for all companies? It's only one. Make money. The company comes first. Well, Phyllis, yeah, but you make the object is to make money and as much as you can. I like that even better. Make the highest. Well, actually, I don't like profit anymore, you see, Ahmad. I'm a cash flow man. I'm into cash. I work with private equity and venture capital. And actually, cash is the name of the game for me. And I always like the highest cash flow. So I'm looking for the highest cash flow possible, net free cash. And I think all of you would agree with that because you can't buy things with profit, but you can buy a heck of a lot with cash. So I'm very into cash and I take a lot of concern over cash in my negotiations, and people ignore that at their peril. So company policy can change and does change. I'll give you an example of this. Recently, one of my students, lovely guy from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is an HR guy. And we're having a debate in the workshop and we're discussing how to get the most out of a job interview. And one of my case studies is a job interview. And he said, well, we have a policy in my company. I said, what's that then? He said, we don't give more than 10% increase on whatever anybody's earning now. That's the deal. So whatever they're earning now, because we always ask them that, we never give them more than 10% above that. So I looked at him, I said, never? He said, yeah, never, never. I said, so you've never broken that rule ever, and you've never had to go to your boss and say, look, I think we've got to do something about this. He said, well, yeah, it happens occasionally. I said, so it isn't a policy at all. It's a guideline. And company policy is a guideline. And my answer to people when they're putting this up is, look, I say, look, of course you've got things you've got to do as a company, and some things you can't do. You can't break the law, blah, blah. However, most of these policies are just guidelines. Let's discuss how we can make mutual benefit from a change to that. And that generally, that's the way to frame it. You don't attack people, you frame it differently. You're coming to the end now, you'll be glad to know you're going to get rid of me. So, this is the second last slide. There are two kinds of negotiator today. What do you think they are? What do you think they are? The ones that use AI and the ones that don't, good ones and bad ones. That's a bit blooming bipolar, isn't it now? AI versus AI is Ahmad. Active, passive, that's an interesting one. Emotional ones and logical ones. Well, let me share you what I think. I think that what you've got are those people who abrogate their responsibilities to AI, and there are those people who use AI as a tool to help them to get a better deal. Now, that's the key to this. I think everyone's got to be using AI now, and if they don't, it's a problem. And the key to it, the real key to it, is to be the human in the loop and to adopt a policy which is effectively small language program driven and uses agents, but you don't abrogate responsibility. You are the person making the decisions. And the fact of the matter is that unless you actually have that mindset, you're going to find yourself in all sorts of trouble. So great negotiators see AI for what it is, a fantastic tool, an increasingly important one, and they educate their tool to learn all the things that they know and create a background information in a small language program, which they then use to drive agents to go away and do specific tasks. But there are sadly a lot of people, including business, forget about negotiations. My son was telling me a lot of people actually just produce an AI report and don't read it and give it to the boss. Jeopardy. How hard did you find implementing AI in your high stakes negotiations? Did you go through a period of trial and error? You've got to be careful with trial and error, Firas. What I did initially was I talked to other people I know and trust. And I did a lot of work on AI, actually. I did a lot of trawling. I looked for AI agents. And I was able to find an awful lot out. There's quite a lot on the net. There's a guy who's really, really good on the net, actually, who uses it for political negotiations with world leaders. He's a professor and he's a really smart guy. He's not a professional negotiator, but he's good at what he does. What I did was, I first of all educated my chosen tool, which is Claude, about the way I negotiate and the way I perceive negotiations. And then I started creating a background information. Then I started using it on small tasks. Then I gave it bigger tasks. Your interesting point, Pritesh, here that AI is a bit too confident. Yes, it is, and too optimistic, and recommends approaches which can ruin a negotiation. Yeah, but if you're a professional negotiator, you get around that. Ayub Fadil, yes, you've raised your hand. Maybe you didn't. If you've got
No,
something to say,
I did, Malcolm. Hi, I was this weekend in Manchester for my graduation. I would like first to thank our two guys from Dubai because they were part of this journey. And so far, I didn't get a workshop with you, but I'm looking forward to have the complimentary one, hopefully next year, the negotiation one. And my way back to home, to Morocco, I was in the Manchester airport. On my way to the duty-free shops, I bought a book named "Never Split the Difference" from Chris Voss. And I am
that's on my text of important readings.
okay. So I'm at the chapter 1 maybe, and then what I found is he was criticizing actually the Zopa and the Batna because he said this was the failure of those guys that he met at Harvard. And my question is, because you are mentioning using AI, and he was basically criticizing the rationality and how we can use these tools to negotiate, where the real part is at the irrational part, and using emotional intelligence and this FBI way of doing. So if you could just clarify a bit about this point.
Look, this is interesting. I mean, I was trained in Harvard, right? By the people who wrote the original books. And Harvard pioneered the rational approach to negotiations in the 80s and 90s. Then the Chicago School came along with a Nobel Prize winning stuff. And in fact, if you read Kahneman's work on Thinking Fast and Slow, that's, by the way, I would read that book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman.
Oh, thank you.
Fabulous book. He's a Nobel Prize winner. And he brought in this System 1 and System 2 thinking thing. Now, the fact is that Voss is a genius, of course, is a brilliant negotiator. He comes from the psychological school. He comes from the sort of the working from the, if you like, the psyche of negotiation. And I think that is not negating the value of rational negotiations. You've got to use both. So you've got to do a careful analysis, which Chris does actually, and then you've got to think how to use it. And you can use AI very, very efficiently to actually gauge the emotional tone of the counterparties. And that's what I use it for now. So I like his stuff. I think it's brilliant. The book's brilliantly well written, by the way. It's a good read. It's a really good read. And I recommend it to all my students. I'd also recommend you watch a film called Draft Day with Kevin Costner, which is a wonderful piece of negotiating from a position of perceived weakness. Fabulous book, a fabulous film. So there's all sorts of stuff, all sorts of ways you can learn about this. But what I would say to you is have an open mind. The rational school of thought and the psychological school are not mutually exclusive. The really smart negotiators meet somewhere in the middle. He talks about black swan, does Chris, a lot in his book, the black swan solution. It's actually interest matrix. He's got to sell books, hasn't he? So, I'm not excited about that bit, but he's a brilliant guy, and I enjoyed the book myself. Actually, I thought it was a great book.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Malcolm.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And no doubt you'll come to the free one next year, and we'll see how you get on. And that could be, it's always a bit of fun in the negotiation workshop because I get to abuse people face to face. It's much more fun. Anyway, any other questions? Because we're getting to the end of the time now, and thank you very much, all of you, for attending, and some great questions, Jorsen. You've done a great job again, Jorsen, at getting people to come. And I have got another of these courses which I'm busy writing. I was talking to Jorsen about it. What I've discussed today is the nuts and bolts of AI. There's nothing really smart in there, but I've discussed the nuts and bolts, and I've written something with my corporates, which shows them what you've got to be careful of. By the way, Pritesh, you don't negotiate with children; you get manipulated. Everybody who's got kids and grandchildren knows that right off the belt end. It doesn't work. And sadly, one of my sons was on this course in Hong Kong, and even more sadly, my wife's been on this masterclass, so I've got no chance. Oh, look, isn't that lovely from Ahmad Badran? I used your program 13 years ago. It's changed my entire life. Well, I'm so pleased. You know something? It changed my life too. And that's why I do it. That's really why I do it. End of story. It gives me a lot of pleasure, emotionally and intellectually. And also, at my advanced age of 51, I'm a liar as well. It keeps my brain going. Well, Justin, you're laughing. That's not nice.
I believe
Over
you, Malcolm. Any more questions for Malcolm, please? You can type in if you don't want to speak. We'll be more than happy to help you with that. Asan Gul, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be a part of your wisdom sharing engagements, Malcolm. Can we get the slide and recording after the call? We can. We will post this in YouTube as a recording session of Professor Malcolm Smith that can be seen by everybody, of course. You're welcome. May Liu. There you go.
Thank you again, Justin, for organizing it so well. You're very professional as ever. Really impressed. Thank you for that. Really easy for me.
Pleasure, sir. Okay, there's one more. To what extent AI is helpful tool for negotiation if the information you're negotiating is discrete or sensitive?
Well, that's a very smart question. The one thing I would say to you is nothing is quite as discreet as you might think. There's a lot of stuff out there. And if you're in a business, if you are discussing discreet and rather secret stuff, you've got to make sure you've got a totally tight firewall around your small language program. A lot of people for example, let's talk about this areas where this is the case. We're talking fintech, very important, and arms negotiations is equally important. So you can do it in those situations because you use proprietary information, and that's the subject all in itself, Dalal. I hope that helps a little bit. And thanks to all Maurizio. Yeah, I see that. Look, I'm so glad that people have turned up as always, and I'm happy to help anytime at all, Justin. It's a lot of fun. Always a lot of fun.
Absolutely, sir.
I hope
Ahmed
this-
Badran rose his hand. Malcolm, Ahmed, you're allowed to speak. Please go ahead. Ahmed.
No, must have been a mistake.
All right, maybe. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to see you
Oh,
again, and I would advise everybody here to watch or to be enrolled in the program of Malcolm, because it will add a lot to your career. And this is I'm talking this from my personal try with Malcolm. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. You bullied me intensely on the program, of course. Everybody bullied me. Terrible. Now, this is a one from Maha saying my boss recently refused to give my usual commission, now wants to negotiate. Any advice? That's a tricky one, that. I would ask one question. All right, I don't know the total information, so it's almost like gin and tonic advices, but I'm going to give you it. In a situation like that, I'd say to your boss, so one thing I would say is this. We've got a deal, right? And I've met my part of the deal. Why do you want to change that? And do you want to change it permanently? Or is this a one-time affair? And can we discuss that in some detail? Because I don't want to let you down ever. Always put yourself as like the offending party. I don't want to ever let you down. So I've got to understand what it is, the basis of which we do business. So you've really got to get people, I know it's tricky this, but you've got to get them talking to you.
Yeah, there's just a very gray area. And the thing is, the work's already been done, and this commission has always historically been given. So I'm inclined to respond very emotionally, and it's very hard to play the negotiating game calmly right now.
Well, what I would do, Meha, I'll tell you what to do, because you've been very honest, and thank you for that. What I would do in this situation, I'd put it through an engine.
Mm.
Put it through an engine and get the engine to
Okay.
give you advice about how to go about it. And believe me, I've done this.
Yeah.
I am in dispute with the Environment Agency of the UK and the UK Health and Safety Organisation in the UK, two very large organisations, because of a landfill that's creating a lot of smells near me.
Oh
And
dear.
I've taken advice on the tone of my emails, because I'm kind of emotional on this. And it's
Yeah.
actually said to me, Malcolm, you're too emotional. The way
Yeah.
to get a response from these people is this. So put as much
Yeah.
information as you can about your boss, as much information about the past and what's happened in the past. In other words, it's got to have context.
Yeah.
And that's the way to tackle it. Don't be emotional.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you, but it ain't going to solve anything.
True. Exactly. It doesn't achieve anything, does it? Yeah.
It only achieves it makes everybody upset. And that doesn't, and I tell you what, people don't make good decisions when they're upset. That's a fact.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
all
That's a
right.
freebie.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate that. All right. That's been an incredible session. Thank you, Malcolm. And just to wrap it up, we just have a few announcements to make. Ronald, go ahead, please. One moment. Let me just put this on. There you go.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Malcolm, for sharing such valuable insights with us tonight. And thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. And we hope you found today's masterclass both insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed this session, we'd love to invite you to continue the learning journey with us through our season 2 of our masterclass series. In this coming weeks, we'll be exploring more timely topics with our world-class faculty, including making decisions in times of great uncertainty on July 30 by Professor Martin Berkeley. And then on August 12, CEOs in the Age of AI with Dr. Reza. And explore the world of MA Educational Leadership in Practice with Dr. Bobby on August 17 at 7 p.m. So simply scan the QR code to register for these upcoming sessions, and we look forward to welcoming you again.
So, as we discovered today, technology may continue to evolve, but the ability to negotiate with integrity, empathy, and purpose will always remain one of the defining qualities of exceptional leaders. Every conversation is an opportunity to build trust, strengthen relationships, solve challenges, and create outcomes that benefit everyone involved.
We hope today's masterclass has encouraged you to see negotiation not simply as a business skill, but as a lifelong leadership capability, one that becomes even more valuable in a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence. We also invite you to continue learning with us through the upcoming masterclass, and together we prepare leaders of the future. So simply scan the QR code on the screen to follow the University of Manchester Dubai on our social media channels and keep up to date with our latest events, insights, and opportunities. We'd also be grateful if you could take a moment to give us a Google review where your feedbacks help us continue creating meaningful experiences for our community. My name is Ronald Sarmiento, and we look forward to welcoming you back to another University of Manchester event very soon. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
The future won't be shaped by technology alone. It will be shaped by people who know how to communicate with purpose, collaborate with confidence, and negotiate for outcomes that create lasting value. And as we celebrate 20 years of excellence, we believe the future belongs to leaders who inspire others, embrace innovation, and drive meaningful change with stronger ideas, stronger impact, stronger future, stronger together. Malcolm, a very good evening, sir. Thank you once again. Always a pleasure.
Thank you,
We
Professor.
will see you soon, sir.
I hope so. I hope so. It's always fun seeing you. And Ronald, well done, Ronald, in your role. He's doing everything. He's going to put me
Thank
on
you
the
very
job
much.
next.
Thank you,
See you soon
Malcolm.
in Dubai.
Bye-bye, everyone.
We will
Bye-bye.
see you. And on behalf of our founding director, Randy Besizo, and the entire team of the University of Manchester Dubai, we made all this possible. Thank you once again for joining us tonight. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Ronald. My name is Jocelyn Ranyola, wishing you a fantastic night ahead. Keep safe and always remember to be that change. Until then, masalama, everyone.